hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. If you did, please help us to make more. Please like, subscribe, tell a friend, give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, please go to my website, rupertisaacson.com. And if you'd like to find out about our certification courses with autism, education, horsemanship, everyday shamanism, there's a whole range of cool stuff. Putting a show together like this is not an easy task. If you'd like to support us, please consider going to our Patreon page and showing us some love there. Even the smallest donation, it really helps us to keep the good content coming. So go to rupertisaacson.com and click on the Patreon link. Not to mention our excellent merch. Please go to our shop and check out some of our really cool rock and roll themed merch, t-shirts, hoodies, all that sort of thing. rupertisaacson.com, it's all there. I can't wait for our next guest and also to meet you there. In the meantime, remember, live free, ride free. Welcome back, rockers and fellow horse nerds. Live free, ride free. I've got Dominique Barbier today. If you know who he is, then my introduction will be superfluous. But if you don't know who he is, he's sort of one of the grands seigneurs of dressage in the last few decades. He's an exponent, he may correct me on this, of the French-Portuguese style of dressage, which is the same one that I practice. And he's written numerous books, many of which have influenced many people, including myself. He operates out of California, but is of course French and teaches all over the world. And his philosophies around what this whole dressing of a horse business means have, I would say, had a positive effect on beginning to unstick some of the more rigid approaches that have beset this thing that we all love so much, and sort of have, affected people more positively and helped them take a wider view, while at the same time, paying attention to the accuracies of the dance itself. But I'm very excited to have him. And as long-winded as that was, it's good that you sort of know that he's not just a horse trainer and a people trainer and, an exponent of the art. He's also, I would say, helped move the whole thing forward ethically. So, Dominique, thank you for coming on the show. I probably got a lot of stuff wrong there, but that's sort of how my perception is. Can you tell us in your words who you are, what do you do, why you do it?
Well, first of all, thank you, Rupert, to have me. That's always a great pleasure for me to talk about what I do, because as you do, it is something that we enjoy and that we want to spread the good words. Therefore, that's always a wonderful thinking to be able to talk about it. Who am I? That's a very good question. I am not sure, really, to tell you the truth, who I am. I am what I am. Therefore, it is, I was a chance, I have a lot of chance in my life when I was a little boy to be able to do my work with horses. I got great help from my dad, who allowed me to do this, which was not a regular sort of job in France for a young man like I was. But he let me do my passion, and I thank him in all my books every time. I just thank him to have let me do what I wanted to do, which kind of little rare and enjoyable. Therefore, very early on, I was somebody fascinated by the horses, and very early on, I had a different kind of vision on the world. It's kind of tough to talk about yourself, as you know, because it's you don't see yourself very much like everybody sees you, thank God. And I was kind of a little weird kid. I always had the possibility to see things differently on two different levels. I had some sort of a foot in one world and foot in this other world. And it was kind of really uncomfortable as a kid, to tell you the truth, but getting used to it. And after that, learn to work with it, and this world of the unknown that very few people speak about because they are kind of afraid of it. I was a young kid and I had a lot of problem because I saw things and I heard things and I sort of see things with my horses that nobody was very much aware of at that time. Just to have a little
Could you
funny
give us some
note.
examples of that? Yeah.
Example, when I think there was another dimension to the horses that really the regular work with horses did not let anybody approach or touch. Something that was very strange to me because it was so natural and so real to me that I could not understand why nobody else could see that. When I was in England, for example, my horses were light. They were too light. It's kind of a really funny thing. Technically speaking, they were horses were too light because even now, a lot of people think that they measure how forward the horse is by the weight he has in your rein, which is completely a nonsense. But even now, or even the people who are more educated think that if they don't feel something in your hand, some sort of heavy for a young horse, then this horse is not forward, which is a completely wrong concept. But anyway, therefore, very early on, I had this very different feelings, how you have to breathe with your horse and how you do have to look at them and not look at them. All those little codes that the horses teach you. And they tell you what they like and they tell you what they don't like.
Mm.
And of course, I study, and I was a very good student by the way that I wanted to do, whoever I study with, I wanted to do what they were doing because that's what I was there for. I was
Mm.
learning their stuff. Therefore, I learned a lot of things that I did not want to do. I learned a lot of stuff that was I was very successful at it. I enjoyed it. It was great, but that was really something that was missing and something that I deeply did not like. Therefore, I went through my study. This a little bit of my first book, Dressage of the New Age.
Mm.
That was kind of a notebook for all that time, and just go through a lot of different trainings, a lot of hunting in England, a lot of racing in France, and steeplechasing and all those polo and jumping and name it. I wanted to do it all. And I did it all a little bit, just to know that I did not want it to do it that way. Therefore, that was my concept of that. Just a little note. Recently, I am involved with the University of Arizona, and with a wonderful group of people who are mathematicians, believe it or not. And as you know, I am not too much of a mathematician myself, but they are absolutely wonderful people that study everything, every animal possible, and make everything into an equation, mathematic equation, that they can help with boats and submarine and plane and medicine and all that stuff, just by mathematician things. And my good friend of there is really involved into horses and wants to do a lot more things. Therefore, now we are riding horses with astronaut shirt to see how your heartbeat is going and to see how your mind is acting or not, what's happening to your body when you ride. And then they take measurements of the horses, measurements of the people, and if there's something change, if they can detect a change, that means that scientifically it exists. Therefore, the funny little guy in the late 60s, early 70s that I was thinking all those little crazy things happen to be scientifically correct now, which I think is kind of funny. It doesn't change me too much, but for a lot of people, I think it's going to change because scientifically speaking, it is proven now that there's so many things who are changing on the mind level, not on the physical level, but the physical and the mental level coming up. Therefore, it's a really a very interesting travel to do this. A little bit like when the Dalai Lama wanted to have all those doctors just studying how those monks meditate in Tibet and what's happening actually when somebody meditates and how this spiritual levels that I was never explored start to be now very much of a scientific level and more understanding about it. Therefore, it's a sort of a good thing to think that everybody is looking in the right direction. Of course, not fast enough. You know that 99% of what people do with horses is purely physical and was and is purely physical for so many dozens of years. And it's just starting to think that maybe there's something else there.
I
Maybe
have a question for you. What did you feel when you say you were this funny little guy back in the 70s? What did you feel was going on in the mind? And what are the measurements now from the University of Arizona showing that confirms that?
Well, there is your breathing, for example, is very important because, as you know, in all thinking of theory of relaxation, the breathing is very important.
Hmm.
And the breathing for me was very interesting as a kid. I was doing a lot of experiment with my breathing, and that allowed me now to have a to be able to be obliged to sleep with a sleeping machine because I just taught my body to stop breathing, and that's not a good thing. Your body should breathe and should function properly. Therefore, all the feeling that when you think something, you know what people think that your horse anticipate. The horse do not anticipate. Your horse simply read your mind. Simply is watching the picture that you send him. Is the visualization of what you want is as real as the other world of kicking and banging and pushing and forcing.
So you were talking about when you, for example, just so I get this right, you can
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong. Back in the 70s or so forth, when you were beginning to, you were working with horses in England, and I'm going to ask you why England in a moment. Given that you were coming out of France, would it not have been easier to stay within the French tradition? But
Well,
just
I can, well,
leaving to
I
go
can
ahead.
tell you, like, I can tell you that very quickly.
Okay.
I went to England because my dad wanted me to be professional and have diplomas. And at that time in Europe, the British Law Society was the only group of people that were actually giving you professional diplomas
Ah,
at
got
that
it.
time.
Got it. Got
That's
it. Yeah, the
that's why.
French were not doing it at that point. Got it. Okay, so you're there and it's all very biomechanical, but you're having these ideas about visualization and getting some results with this, as well as with the actual physical techniques. But presumably, this is falling to some degree on deaf ears, at least within the equestrian community at the time. But now, and and the way you were experimenting with ways to breathe and ways to visualize. Can you tell us a little bit? Put us back in the shoes of that young man on that horse in England back in that time. What are you visualizing? How are you changing your breathing? And what effects did you notice?
Well, as I told you before, it was kind of a pretty natural to me. Therefore, how can I express that? Maybe I can express that from the very beginning, where I decided to go to be a professional. And my dad allowed me to go back to England to Crabbett Park to do an assistant instructor of British Law Society.
Okay.
And at that time, I was not knowing very much. I just was going there. And what happened there was that I was able to ride horses in England. That was a kind of a pony, the pony club type of things. I was
Hmm.
very bored. And I went to see the top man there, the man who at the school, and I said, at 11 o'clock in the morning, you have a course that I will give a lesson that is really interesting. Can I join in? And he was surprised. He looks at me and he said, well, of course. And I did not know at that time it was a course for the fellowship of the British Horse Society. At that time, there were only 12 people with this exam, and they were top professional that wanted to do this. Therefore, I did not know that. I sat on my little horse, and they were talking about doing the shoulder in and the haunches in and blah, blah, blah. And my English was very minimum, but I could figure it out. And then in the middle of the lesson, I heard, oh, look at the frog. Well, the frog, I know that was me. And they stop and they look at me and they ask me how I was doing that. And I said, well, you asked me to do this, that's what I do. Therefore, I had a lot of very instinctive things happening there.
Got it.
And it was very natural. And I did not understood it. Now, when I became professional, I had a 9 month where I could not ride. And I will tell you why. And I discovered a lot of things there, why I could not ride. It's because I wanted to know what was happening with me. Exactly the question that you asked me. What was happening there? I did not know. And when I started to ask myself what was happening, if I become professional, I was authentic enough to know that I had to figure it out. And I basically could not figure it out, and I could not ride anymore.
When you
Because
say you couldn't ride, you couldn't put your foot in the stirrup, or when you got up there, you found yourself at a loss, or you just found yourself a bit like a writer with writer's block, feeling that you couldn't approach the horse until you figured this out.
exactly. All of that.
Mm-hmm.
All together. It was a simple thing that I was putting, as I say now that I could explain what happened to me, I was putting my intellectual brain between me and the horse, and you stop everything.
Yeah.
If you think the time that when you are riding in your intellectual mind, it just cut the whole system together.
Yes. I think I can sort of hear in my mind the dissenters, the naysayers to that saying, what do you mean? You know, I go for my dressage ride or I go for my jumping ride and my instructor, you know, talks to me through the little thing in my ear and micromanages every moment of my ride. And I go and get my ribbon at the dressage event or at my jumping event. So therefore it's working for me. And although I can think of a lot of things to say to that, I think it's just worth playing devil's advocate because people are coming at this, I think, for the right reasons and in good faith. They're trying to ride well. They're trying to do right by their horse. They're trying to seek out the best mentorship they can. And of course, inevitably, like many forms of modern mentorship, it ends in the intellectual and the physical. And they are getting results now. Okay, perhaps they look a little stiff, perhaps they look a little robotic, perhaps they look a little cramped, perhaps they look a little stressed, but they are getting results. So when you say something like you are saying,
Can
how
I
do you
interrupt?
reassure the listener that
Can
is
I?
saying, but I'm trying so hard, Dominique? You know what I mean? Just speak to that if you would.
Yeah, I can. I wanted to interrupt you there. It
Mm,
depends what the success of your learning is for you.
mm,
If you are happy with the blue ribbon and the banging and the pushing and the kicking,
mm,
there is space for that.
mm,
Like there's space for fast food.
mm,
There is space for the world that we're living now, and we are seeing that all the time now.
mhm.
And I just want to say there's space for something else. And I think it's not fair
Yeah.
to put one different than the other. If you
Mm,
want if you want a burger, you eat a burger. If you want to eat fast food, you eat fast food. If you want to have a Michelin star or your grandmother's favorite dish, that's what you have.
mm,
It's a different approach on life. This is
mm.
not a matter of success or no success. It is not a matter of what it is the way you feel. And
This. Thanks for clarifying that because I do feel that that helps people to understand that there's no right or no wrong here, no hierarchy of, you're going to be sent to the seventh realm of Tartarus if you accidentally hit your horse too hard with your mouth or your in the mouth or with your legs or something, that it's or if you want to ride biomechanically, that there's anything somehow morally wrong with that. Because I think so much, particularly in the
Rupert,
last 5 years or so, people have begun to talk in that way,
can I
which is so
interrupt you?
extreme. Yeah,
Can I interrupt you?
please.
If riding a horse is to have your partner happy,
Mm,
like they say, it's even in the rule. All what we're talking about now
mm,
is not really relevant. Because if your goal is to have your horse happy, you
mm,
understand that everything you do on top of him, physically, generally, it doesn't like.
mm,
And we have 90%, I spend 90% of my time trying to be out of his way.
mm,
And then 10% after the 90% to try to help him if I think I can. But that helping stuff before leaving them alone, I don't think is, to my knowledge of relationship, is not correct. If you have a relationship, have your partner happy.
mm,
And your horse will tell you that. Your horse will tell you. People ask me all those complicated questions, and I always say, do your horse like it?
yeah.
I mean, do your horse like spurs? Do your horse like airfoils? Do your horse like all those things that you do to it? No,
Mm,
it doesn't.
mm,
No, it doesn't. And again, people start to try to put it into a very higher level of technique of this and
mm,
that. And you are talking to somebody who had a collection of spurs. I have 300 spurs in my collection. I
mm,
was very much in my spurs and very much into my stuff. And I really regret it very much because
mm,
my horses were not happy. And I
mm,
was not happy.
mm,
But I did not know at that time. I think I think that we to carry on the way I'm thinking about this, it is a matter of who you are and what you're looking for. Therefore, it's not a, if you want to be an Olympian, go right ahead. I have good addresses for you and good horses that will produce this for you. Now, don't talk to me about happy people and happy horses because they're not.
yeah, yeah. I get you. Now, let's go the other extreme because, as you know, monkeys, that's us, tend to think in extremes to our detriment. And so I would say that in the last 5 years in particular, I've noticed in the course of the conversations that I've, you know, been part of, that there's become a drift towards the other extreme, people reacting against the biomechanical push and kick and pull to the extent that now there's a rising camp saying you may not even touch the horse
Yeah.
unless the horse has somehow emailed you
Yes.
his consent, which I don't know how he's going to do that. And therefore, it's reached a sort of an extreme where people can find themselves almost in a state of paralysis. And of course, the middle ground in between of relationship is more fluid than that and murkier than that and messier than that. If that is true with humans to humans and horses to horses, when we observe horses in their herd dynamics, they're sometimes at peace with each other and sometimes not, and sometimes they're nice to each other and sometimes they're shitty to each other, and sometimes they go through all of the same stuff that we do. But yet they have like us, they have a sort of a basic stasis of this is our culture, particularly when, they can live in somewhat naturalistic settings. How do we balance the extreme that you were reacting to and that is still there with the extreme that I just talked about, which is, I think, a rising extreme, and hit that middle ground of happiness? What do you say to that?
Well, I think extreme. I think that's as you said, that's the world right now in politics and in everything. Again, it's a very personal thing.
Mm,
You I don't know your life, Rupert, very much, but because of the circumstances, you got a kid who was autistic, and that make you change your life in a very deep way.
Mm.
Well, what do we consider horses autistic?
Mm.
What do we consider ourselves autistic? And then should we touch them? Should we hold them? Should we compress them? Should we talk to them? Not talk to them? I mean, all those questions are very personal and very unique to the person and to the situation. Therefore, as a teaching method,
Mm.
there is extreme. I mean, not very long time. I hate to say that, but the you know the in this wonderful movie about the guy that invented the bomb, and the Queen apologized because they persecuted him because the poor guy was gay at that time. And that was considering like an awful, terrible thing to do. Therefore,
Mm.
we are learning in the world of people who are different and have different relationship with the world, with themselves, with the thing. And I think it's a human experience. Therefore, the
Yeah,
more, the
I
more,
think your point about autism is an interesting one because definitely it changed my approach to everything
of course,
as it would. But one of the things it did was this is why I asked the question of that middle line. Because, for example, I'm big on finding mentorship. If I don't know something, I will try to find people that do and learn from them, similar to you. And so, for example, when I was in this position with my son and could not reach him, and I observed that the therapists that were working with him also could not reach him, I thought, well, okay, then a mentor is needed here. What qualities must that mentor have? That mentor must be autistic, because otherwise it's just a set of opinions. That
yes,
mentor must have had the particular, or must have the particular type of autism that my son does, which means that at 3, they must have been, non-verbal, shitting themselves and harming themselves. And then they must have made it. Who's that person? And I found that person actually. That's Dr. Temple Grandin at the University, Colorado State University, and that's her trajectory. So I actually just went to her and said, "How does my son become you?" And meaning that it's not enough for somebody to remain where they are in the world, because if my son had remained like that, he would not have survived. In the wild, he would have died. So, how does my son, who's downstairs, by the way, cleaning up the kitchen before he takes himself off into the German town of Wiesbaden for the day, who's just flown over here from Texas by himself, who just sold his house last year, who has his own car, who's got a couple of jobs, and that's the same. Yeah, he's the now young man of 26.
yeah,
He How do you teach somebody the practical life skills that they're going to need to survive and thrive on the planet? And the same with a horse. How do you give a horse that life insurance? Because, of course, it is a domesticated animal, and you may very well pass that horse on to somebody else, and you
yeah,
want that horse to have a good outcome. So, if you have just a private language between yourself and that horse, well, that's great as long as it's just the two of you. But, of course, as soon as that equation goes, so we need something more universal where that horse can find,
yes,
security at the very least. And then after that, we can talk about happiness and quality of life, because there will be a life to make quality. But if there is no life, then it's irrelevant. So this is really my question with so my worldview got very affected by this. That yes, you're right. It's very personal. One has to design the approach individually, and yet at the same time there are universals, which is the nervous system and the brain is paradoxical. It's at once very, very individual, and at once it's also very universal. So there are rules of thumb one can follow, and then we tweak it and that is where I think something like the French-Portuguese system is so good, because I feel it has that flexibility. It allows for that. It gives one a sort of a framework for a horse and a human to come into a state of coherence. And then wherever you go with that is wherever you want to go with that. But a little bit like, let's say you want to learn, I don't know, salsa, or you want to learn karate. There are some, or you want to learn piano. there are some steps of the dance or ways to do your finger on the keyboard or on the fretboard of the guitar that if you learn them and in that quote unquote classical meaning handed down the generations, if you learn them in that way, then you can then take that and do whatever you want with it. But it gives you you at least know the steps of the salsa. You at least know the katas of the karate or whatever, or you at least know how to make the shapes on the fretboard of the guitar to follow
Yeah.
the melody. And then what you do with that melody is up to you. So yeah, that's my question to you is it's one thing to abandon and say it's too pedantic to follow any system at all, but you yourself have learned several systems, and I presume that they give you a base from which to break the rules, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you were saying, if you want to learn an instrument, the classical way teach you to be able to play with other people who play classically.
Mm,
Therefore, you need to know how to put your finger on the piano to get your technique. That's no problem at all. You have to learn that. But after that, your
mm,
goal, what is your goal?
right.
Is your goal, as I say, it's not to teach a monkey 100 words of English is a wonderful because you are going to get a monkey speaking English at the end. But it really does that going to teach you how to speak monkey? No, we're not going to learn about monkey if we want them to speak our language. We need to speak the horse's language. We
Hmm.
need to be a horse. We need to give them a voice. And that's what you did for your kid, for example,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
you could not, as a human, react. He was different and you were different. Therefore, you become him. Well, we need to become horse. We need to become people that don't aggress them first. And then
Mm.
after that, we can do everything we want to do. I always say, people say, "Oh, I don't want to make mistake." I say, "No, you are going to make mistake.
Mhm.
Everybody makes mistake. That's the way you learn. That's a human experience. But your heart is in the right place. You want to be part of that relationship with them, and you want to have them really okay with you. And
Yeah,
if
I
that
think that's often overlooked. One is put in
it is
such fear
completely
place with people.
overlooked. It is completely overlooked. Let me
Mm.
tell you, you talk about the French-Portuguese
Mm.
people. With all the respect I have, those poor Portuguese people, they learned the French, and thank God to my master to be Portuguese and carry on when nobody in France was there to do it.
You're talking
But
about Nuno.
yes,
Yeah,
about the mystery and
yeah,
and I think that what is important there is to realize where you want to position yourself in all that. Where do you want to be with yourself? And
yeah.
and without using a big word, but I'm I am going to use a big word. There is a level of consciousness that we need to be at. And
I wholeheartedly agree. And every one of the really good, let's call them masters for want of a better word, who of these dead dudes, these just old masters, whatever we want to call them, who left these books for us, they more or less all say the same thing. I mean, if you're reading Xenophon, he's saying you must make the appropriate offerings to the appropriate gods. You must put yourself in the right mind and spirit when you're approaching a horse, which is interesting because in his state of consciousness, you think there's a little part of me that goes, yeah, Xenophon, but you own slaves. What about them? Okay, but let's leave that aside. Or when you have, Pluvinel in the 17th century going to the French king and saying, listen, our aristocracy is out of control. We've had 100 years of religious and civil wars, and we will never match Spain until we can get control of our ruling class. And one of the things, as Xenophon said, about training a horse in this three-dimensional way that we call dressing the horse is that it requires you to control your emotions. So, sire, I propose that we create these academies in France, sponsored by the state, that the sons of our nobility can go to, so they don't have to be like me and go down to Italy to learn it. And they will learn to control their emotions so that they can actually run the country and not destroy it. And so this idea of emotional, bringing one's consciousness to a point, as you just said, where it's possible to think in 3 dimensions as a human, so that one can ask a horse to lend us its 3 dimensional power in order to go and do things, is, of course, if it's approached in that way, a very good exercise for a human. So I think people have been aware of this, probably since the Bronze Age, since people were first starting to do this, and I bet it always divided it a little bit into the camps of those who just wanted to physically do it and those who saw a portal to greater consciousness through it. Today, though, if you've got somebody who wants to, as you say, enter horse, like for me, what I had to do with Rowan, with my son, to learn with him was to follow him, simply to follow him. And in the course of that, I could identify patterns and then see what was positive and what was worth following and what was negative and needed healing and assuaging, and try and gradually introduce skills through the things that he was interested in anyway. And that, to be honest, is how anybody learns. I mean, I speak French and I learned French on the back of a horse. You speak English, you learned English on the back of a horse. I speak German now, I learned that on the back of a horse, because I was interested to be there, and certain things go on in the brain when you move and problem solve. Okay, all of that is true. Now, most people who own horses do not have the time to follow a horse like I followed Rowan. And most of the people who own a horse have a job and they have a family, and they probably have to keep their horse in an imperfect situation at a riding club or a public stable, where they are not in control of the environment, how much of a herd that horse gets to live in, how much outside time that horse gets, etc., etc., etc. How do people in this position, which is the reality, we don't want to shame them, we don't want to say, oh, you shouldn't be, and they're not lucky, they're not like me, they don't have Andalusia as their backyard, or the state of Wyoming as their backyard. How can they achieve what you're talking about?
Well, life will tell them what it is.
Mm,
Life in their own way will teach them what they have to learn. You learn all that stuff because life, God give you a kid that was different, and they give me a horse who was different, and then I was interested into the horse that I learned the most was Don Giovanni, and
mm.
Don Giovanni was a horse that taught me 95% of everything I know, because he did not do it the way I knew.
Absolutely.
I had to find another way for him. I had to completely turn myself upside down and just learn that I did not know anything, and I would learn from him.
Can
And
you give us a biography of this horse? How did he enter you? How old were you? How did he enter your life? And tell
well,
us a little bit that story.
yes, Don Giovanni was an extraordinary horse. I had I was in Portugal, and I bought my first horse with the mystery in Santa Catarina there in the fair. It was a half brother of a horse that he had, and Pasquale was my first horse, and I wanted another horse. And at that time, senior engineer Fernando Dandrade was a good friend of the mystery, and certainly one of the most important breeder in Portugal.
You were
And
saying Mister, not just for the listeners, just an accent thing. Dominique's not saying mystery here. He's saying mestre. He means
mystery,
master, and
he
he means
master, correct?
Master Nuno Oliveira. And we're going to
Yes,
find out how he
yeah,
found his way to Nuno. Okay, so a friend of Nuno's,
yeah,
this Andrade dude, who a lot of people don't know, but the Andrade family in Portugal is synonymous with the Lusitano horse. Let's just leave it there for a moment. Okay, so you are lucky enough to know Nuno. You're lucky enough to know this sort of deity of the Portuguese horse, Senor Andrada. And is it through him that you get Don Giovanni?
Yeah, amazingly enough, he was over there, and I have in my life a series of events were very incredible. For example, Mr. Andrade invited me to go to his quinta on the Golgan Day, and I spent a week there with them with their family, which was unheard of. I never seen anybody doing that. But long story short, I was looking for another horse, and those horses were very expensive. Like you say, he was one of the top 3 or 4 top breeders that represent the breed of the Lusitanos there.
Over centuries, yeah.
The century with the Vegas and the
Mhm.
Bragas and all those. And I went there and I saw those horses, and I was passing by, and you have to understand, I was there during the revolution, yes, 75 in Portugal. And a lot of social movement was happening there. And I saw that horse actually chained down to a stall, like all the people don't know that, but the Portuguese horses at that time, and the horses in the world at that time, were in tie stalls. They were not in the box stall, like they called them. Only thoroughbred were in box stall because they couldn't be tied. Therefore, every working horse or every horse was in the tie stall. They eat in the front and they poop at the back. They were led to water 3 times a day. That was their life. And then they work. Therefore, I saw that poor horse there, and I was really amazed by him, and I wanted to see him. And he says, no, I could not see him because he injured one of his worker, and he was going to be destroyed. And he was a striker. He used to strike with his front leg. Anyway, therefore, I insisted and I insisted, and he turned him loose for me. And the horse was completely very, very tight. He had a beautiful walk and canter, but the trot was just like non-existent. And he was so tense and tight mentally that he was not moving his body at all. But somehow I had these things about him. Therefore, I went back home and I talked to the mystery, and the mystery said, oh, only me can train those horses when they are crazy, and I just cannot tell you what is happening. And are you still there? Yes. And anyway, long story short, my she said, no, you can't have him. And then my mother came for dinner, and the mistress said, oh, your mother is so beautiful, you can have your horse. And anyway, lots of end of dinner conversation. I could have my horse, and then I had him to coming to my place. The thing was that if I could ride him after a month, I could keep him. If not, that he would be destroyed. Therefore, I arranged him to come to the farm. It took 5 people for me to sit on him the first day. And then for at least 10 days, I faced the wall because I could not have him straight. It was not possible. And anyway, nothing works. Therefore, I had to change so many things that I did. I was I I was in passage before I was in trot because the poor horse could not relax. For things, I mean, hundreds of stories just like that. The long story that I'm telling you is that this horse was so different from everybody else that if I wanted to be learning something, I wanted to be him. I had
So
to
how
be.
did you find your way into him? As you know, if you followed any of my work, I'm an autism dad, and we have a whole career before this podcast in helping people with neurodivergence, either who are professionals in the field. Are you a therapist? Are you a caregiver? Are you a parent? Or are you somebody with neurodivergence? When my son Rowan was diagnosed with autism in 2004, I really didn't know what to do. So I reached out for mentorship, and I found it through an amazing adult autistic woman who's very famous, Dr. Temple Grandin. And she told me what to do. And it's been working so amazingly for the last 20 years that not only is my son basically independent, but we've helped countless thousands of others reach the same goal, working in schools, working at home, working in therapy settings. If you would like to learn this cutting edge neuroscience-backed approach, it's called movement method. You can learn it online. You can learn it very, very simply. It's almost laughably simple. The important thing is to begin. Let yourself be mentored as I was by Dr. Grandin and see what results can follow. Go to this website, newtrailslearning.com. Sign up as a gold member. Take the online movement method course. It's in 40 countries. Let us know how it goes for you. We really want to know. We really want to help people like me, people like you out there live their best life, to live free, ride free, see what happens.
Circumstances, I think he was enticed, I told you, and then he kicked another horse, and I had to, I think, 7 injections at that time. The antibiotics were not compound them, therefore you had to have 7 of them a day, and I was injecting him 7 times a day, and then after that I had to step by step listen to him. I had to
Talk us through that process.
Well, I was in a situation where everything that I was learning or that I had learned basically did not work with them. I mean, I hate to say that, but a little bit like when you were a young man and then you had that kids, and
Yeah,
then
sure.
those rules don't apply to
Right. So I could talk you through how I found my way. Talk us through how you found your way. Like, take us chronologically. How did you find your way into Don Giovanni?
Well, I think the big thinking there that I realized that was I needed to be mental, because the physicality did not work. It was so tight and so tense that whatever I was doing physically, it did not work.
Okay.
Therefore, I needed to find another way, and the other way was to try to communicate with that brain that was there, and very, very powerful, very, very strong, and also, I can't say dangerous, but dangerous because he did not accept anything. Therefore, what I did is I did my 3 steps. After I sat on him, after I was straight, after I could walk, I was doing 3 steps. 1, 2, 3. Let the rein go long. His nose was on the ground. Then I used to pick up my rein and go 1, 2, 3 steps and repeat this and repeat this and repeat this until we became one. Until I can prove to him that I could do whatever he wanted the way he wanted to, and I was listening. And then he said that was okay.
What did you find that he really liked? How did you find his preferences and his enjoyment and his pleasure? And then how did you tweak your way of riding and training to follow that?
What I told you before, you have to learn that you have to spend 90% of your time not bothering them.
Mm.
Give them clear thinking, like 3 steps, stop, long neck, shorter urine walk, and very simple task. And get out of the way. Do not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Do not use your leg. Do not use your hand. Do not do anything. Just sit there and wait. Because he could not take the contact. He never touched the rein, and I certainly could not touch him with my leg. And the seat, I was sitting on him because I was sitting on him, but I was not his choice. For if I decide to do that, which was my problem, if I can say that, then I had to learn the story after that. And what should I do or not do? I learned a lot of things that I should not do with him.
What should you not do?
Use my leg, use my
Mm-hmm.
use the physicality did not work.
Absolutely. And then did you find that there were certain things he really enjoyed doing?
Yeah, I think he ultimately, I always said that to people that we want to dance with the horses, but I never saw horses bring me the saddle and say, Dad, I want to dance with you. Okay. Therefore, it's a really one-sided, the dance kind of thinking. Yeah. A little bit like human dance. You invite somebody to dance, and if they like to dance with you, they are going to say yes. If they don't like to dance, they will tell you no.
Mm.
But how many people do this with the horses?
Well, right, but that's why I'm asking for specifics, because people often ask me this. I'll give you an example, perhaps, to make it
Yes.
clearer. So, like you said, in England, you had some experience with some hunting. I grew up doing a lot of that, and I observed that most horses enjoyed it because why? They were out with their
Yes.
friends. They
Yeah.
were there, so they're in a herd. They're crossing country. They're using their brains. They're having adventures. They're it's it's really designed. It really doesn't matter whether the person on top rides badly or well. The horse is kind of okay,
They have
and
they
so
have to.
right. So when I began my dressage adventure, I realized I want to have a horse that has that feeling of joy, because also the reason I'm even doing this dressage is so that I can work with an autistic child in collection, and I need to transmit well-being to this child. And if the horse has no well-being, well, there is no well-being to transmit. So I do know one good
Very
picture of
good. That's
well-being, right? So I had that as a if you like an example to follow.
yeah, sure.
So now when I'm training horses, obviously I do I do almost all of it on the ground before I go into the saddle, but I really look to see what they show me that they like. And because I have this background in hunting, I usually take them out into nature and I see what do they kind of like to do. Like some of them really love jumping and some of them really love solving little puzzles rather of terrain, and others really need a sense of security from another horse, and others like to be out in front. And so I can sort of see the horse's preferences to some degree by taking them out like that, and then I can say, okay, this French-Portuguese system that I'm working to, I can tweak it to their preferences because they've shown me what the preference is. And then the other thing which I've often found is that horses are made to go to work before they've played, which is often where a lot of things go wrong. And it was Master Valenza who really showed me that. He said, let the horse play first in an anarchy phase. And then when his brain is sort of ready, then present him with something that you want to learn. I was like, my God, that makes so much sense. So now I take it to the extreme where frequently I have this whole thing called crazy time, particularly because for about 5 years I had in Germany to keep my horses in a riding stable where in the winter they barely got out. And so I learned how to use the indoor arena as a whole playground and with free jumping and all sorts of fun activities. And I would end up putting them in there. I wouldn't even need to tell these horses to jump. They just go and have all kinds of fun. And then when I then wanted to say, okay, now let's look at some dressage stuff, they'd be like, yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, here I am. I'm full of endorphins and my mind is ready and open and I feel good. So yeah, show me what you got. Or now if I go into the arena and I just feel that my horse is just not there, I'm like, no problem. I will just turn right around and go into the forest and maybe try a little bit of what I wanted in the forest. And then tomorrow, maybe we come back to the arena. So this thing about letting horses show you their preferences can be quite concrete and easy to follow. And I think people need more than the esoteric for these things because the esoteric comes in anyway. The spiritual comes in anyway because you're dealing with a monkey and a pony, both products of the greater consciousness, if you will. So any time that you're interacting, that spirituality is going to obviously come into play. But I think people are often really lost, and it is helpful for them, particularly when they're looking to a sort of elder statesman like you, Dominique. If you say, yeah, listen, I had this really difficult horse. That was very good what you gave us. 1, 2, 3, let the rain go. 1, 2, 3, let the rain go. But there must have been a host of other things with this particularly difficult and dangerous horse that might have been destroyed if he hadn't been lucky enough to meet you. So how did you create the framework of observation of what he liked, and what did he show you that he liked?
It's a very good question. To tell you the truth, I in the lunging of the horse, the first in the Portuguese system, as you call it, or the French system, the first part of the lunging is a free lunging, is just
Indeed.
a enjoyment. Yes,
Yeah.
enjoyment. If it's cold, or
Anarchy phase that Mr.
that's it.
Valenza
Yeah,
calls it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the fun stuff. And
Yeah.
then they say, and then after that, when it's done, then we go to a little routine of what we decide to do on that day. And then you have some sort of a plan. I say you always have a plan. And then after that, you have a plan because you have to change it
Yeah.
because something else happened. Therefore, as you know, I am a teacher, and I have my people smiling a lot.
Mm,
I think that if you smile, you have more people smiling around you. That's just
mm.
basic things of life. If you have a very serious face because you're concentrating on things, it's just not a very positive thing, especially for the animals.
Yeah.
I think that the enjoyment of them is by feeling that there is something happening between you and them.
Go on.
I think that's exactly what it is. If you let a horse alone on the field with another horse, yeah, the first thing he does, they eat. They like to eat because that's survival and that's very important for them. And then if they have a mate, well, sometimes they play a little bit, or they don't play. They like to know what their number is. If number one, number two, and I can move towards you and you run away from me, and that type of thinking. And after that, it's all some sort of imagination of what you were telling us about what make them please and what make them don't please. Really, if you as you were saying, the extreme people, they like them in the field and taking pictures, which I think is fabulous. I
Mm.
think if you don't want to do anything with your horse, I think taking pictures in a beautiful field and feeding them and calling the vet and all that is a fantastic
Yeah,
thing
there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
there's
sure.
nothing wrong with that. Now, if you want to some sort of play with them, then play with them.
Mm,
It could be
mm,
jumping, it could be chasing them, it could be, the working in freedom. You can have so many different ways to look at your life because it is your life in relation with them.
mm. I think what stands out from what you just said is play. And back to Don Giovanni then. How did you find how he liked to play? How did Don Giovanni like to play?
He loved to passage.
Okay.
He said, "You see, I don't like anything. I really don't. But if you don't move, I am going to give you a passage who's going to knock you down." And even after that, when I was giving lessons with him, he used to torture people by having say, "Hey, you know something? I have this gift for you, and if you sit there, don't touch me. If you just sit there, I will give you the best passage feeling you can have in your life." Yes. And then after that, he learned how to do his little levad. The levad was a good trick for him
Hmm.
because he was like a kid. He had tricks. Therefore, I can do that for you, even if you don't ask. And, and,
Right.
that, and that's why he was kind of a little tricky at the beginning. But they offer you stuff, and I
Yeah.
think that's the way a good dancer tell his mate that they could do that trick together and they have a good
Yeah.
time.
Yes. I think that's so. There's some real clues here. So listeners, I'm just addressing the listeners and watchers now. If you have been listening to this since the beginning, you will remember that Dominique said this horse was a striker. He liked to use his front hooves, and initially he was using them in a way that was not conducive to human and monkey happiness. Some people got hurt, but this is in stallions, particularly some stallions, particularly stallions from that Andrada line, why do I know this? Because I got one. And yes, they like to use their front legs. And then one can say, okay, I can either go with this or not go with this. And if I go with this, perhaps I could end up with him showing me how he would like to use this expression that could end up in very beautiful Spanish walk, a very beautiful passage, in a even the Levade is related to that, in a way that pleases him and allows him to feel fulfilled. Or I could say, no, no, that's not safe, and try to shut the behavior down and go against it. Now, if you are not lucky enough to have the type of instruction that Dominique had from Master Nuno Oliveira, and we need to find out how you found your way to him. I've been lucky too. I've had much instruction from Mr. Valenza and the Valenza family, who are related to Nuno and that line. Had I not lucked into that, I might not have known how, with my own horse Zag, to go through a rather similar process that you've talked about. Of this horse would do all kinds of things, but he was also brilliant, and I could tell he was generous. But it was a lot about getting out of the way, and what he told me, showed me exactly what you've described, Dominique, which is that I had to neutralize my legs and my seat. And it took me about, I don't know, 2.5 years to really do that. Because as a jumping rider, of course, you close the leg and put power in your leg because you have to. Otherwise, when you land, you will fall off. And I'm still a jumping rider, so now I've just learned to be versatile. When I'm jumping, I can use this bit of muscle. When I'm not jumping, this dressage thing, I'm not going to use it. But of course, it took me a while to get there. As soon as I stopped using my legs and my seat, oh my gosh, did this horse show me things. And it's very, very similar to what you've said. He has this, he's also an Andrada. He has this absolutely extraordinary passage that he'll give you. He'll also go into kind of perma piaf if you'll let him, and have a lot of fun with that, sometimes with a bit of a sense of humor. And there's a joy to it where I don't feel I'm making him piaf or I'm making him passage. Quite the opposite. I feel I'm getting out of his way so that he, like James Brown, can get up there and do his thing. Now, but it took a horse almost that extreme to really make me neutralize. And then I realized, of course, every other horse I got on that was not an Andrada, a brilliant Andrada, complex Andrada Lusitana. Every time I get on a quarter horse now, every time I get on a thoroughbred, every time I get on a warm blood, every time I get on a cob, I now ride with this neutrality. And oh my gosh, do they show me stuff? But nobody told me this. And it's so interesting that even in like the works of Nuno Oliveira, which we can read and reread and reread, he hints at this. He goes round the mountain about it, but he doesn't just tell you to do it. It would be, and I do feel that it's, life is short, and we shouldn't be torturing people. So for example, when you stumble into something like what you stumbled in with Don Giovanni, I don't think that is specific only to Don Giovanni. I think Don Giovanni is just an extreme enough horse that he will accept nothing else. But then I'm pretty sure, I bet you that when Dominique Barbier gets on another horse, he rides that other horse pretty much as if he was sitting on Don Giovanni, and allows that other horse to show him what he wants to do. Would I be right in assuming that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And your comment about the mystery, you have to understand that at the time of where they lived, they were not telling you stuff.
Yeah.
Well, there's a little bit of a funny business telling stories about the mystery. Now everybody's a student now, suddenly. And what is fascinating is that the man really did not give you anything. He was hinting you, as you said. He was not telling you. He was putting you into a situation where things can happen. And that was his great mastery. That was what he was doing. If you read the first chapter of nearly all of my books, I tell the story that changed my life about that great big horse that was able to collect himself on the loose rein, just with the upper part of the body back, and that changed my life. That changed my whole aspect of thinking. How could you collect a horse just having your upper part of your body going back, up, and back? And that was something that 10 days, it was in the old Picadero in Lisbon, that it allowed me to feel that. And that was life-changing even now, that descente de main, descente de jambe follows me for everything right now. And not as a lot of people think of something that can happen when you get very old and when you have done a lot of things. It can happen at the walk when you are very young.
Absolutely.
And if you are told that just exists,
Yes.
but at that time, at that time, the great cooks were having those cooking recipes that they keep secret, and then they realized they could make millions by writing cooking books and writing all those secret recipes and realizing that people still can't cook. It's just
Yes, but
a matter of the
I'm a great
recipes.
believer in the transmission and dissemination of clear information, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because I feel that aids happiness. I've seen, so for example, let's just move away from horses for a second. In my work with human rights or in my work with autism, there are things that are really, really useful for people to know about some sort of basic neuroscience, the neuroscience of happiness, the neuroscience of unhappiness, and how one can move between them, or, within human rights, certain aspects of how to prove ancestral ownership of land so that if you go into a courtroom, it will stand up, and those people can not be on the street anymore and go back to their forest or whatever it is. And I feel that within the dressing of the horse, this dressage business, which can be so joyful and can be so unjoyful, there are some really clear things which, if one follows them, will lead to joy. And I'm not entirely convinced that those people of the great Nuno's generation were necessarily concerned that much with human joy. And the reason is because I've met quite a lot of people. I've met quite a lot of the products of those people.
They were not necessarily into horses either.
Yes, exactly. Human happiness and horse happiness wasn't necessarily their primary motivation, even if they said it was. There were other more complex demons there, and that were probably not even their fault. Just the.
That's a very nice way to put it, Rupert.
Yes.
Very nice.
And we all sort of grew up with this, but I believe that it doesn't need to be that way. So, for example, when I'm talking, I really have seen that there is an equation that if you use crazy time and that sort of playtime, focused playtime, and nature to see what the horse really kind of enjoys, and then you use this sort of French-Portuguese system saying, okay, I can use lunging to build a horse physically, and then I can teach him balance, and then I can also use in-hand work to show him and myself what are these things that we need to do to collect before I ride, and I can use long reins a little bit the same. And then if I then put a rider on the horse while I'm on the ground with the horse doing the thing he already knows on the ground, and I add a rider's aid to my ground aid, then the horse goes, oh, right, yeah, sure, that means the same thing. I accept, and there's a smooth learning curve, and kind of people progress happily, and so do the horses. And I do see that absolutely played out time and time again. Now, to be fair, Luis Valenza showed me that and showed me how to reproduce it. Where my talent is that I can put things I can take things from esoteric terms and put them in layman's terms because I'm a journalist by training. But I'm also a great believer that clarity creates happiness, because all of the esoteric stuff and all of the complexities and nuances, they'll come anyway. We can absolutely rely on life and horses and to present us with innumerable challenges. But if we have a basic roadmap to drive from Paris to Lyon or London to York, it is really helpful. And but we assume we'll have some adventures along the way, and it's good to know how to fill up the tank. I just feel that, when one's piecing together the writings, for example, of Nuno Oliveira, when you've been lucky enough, like you have, to have had the education you have, or lucky enough, like I have, to have sought out education through someone like Mr. Valenza, I can then interpret what's being written. But if you didn't have that, it would be more or less impossible. And I find that quite sad, because there's so much wisdom in there. And people deserve it, and horses deserve it. If we're truly here to try to make a difference in this happiness suffering equation, surely clarity is helpful in that, is it not?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Clarity and the clarity of the goals. Again, what do people want?
Mm,
What do people, we are back to square number one. What
mm,
do you want out of that relationship? What is the most important part of that relationship? And what are you going to do about it?
What do you, when you're teaching, you teach all over the world, what's the number one goal that people tend to tell you that they want?
Well, more and more, and I think it's a progress that way. More and more, they verbally want to be closer to their horses.
Mm,
I think from my generation on, where it was pretty much when I was young, we have a generation of old gentlemen, old French gentlemen who used to ride their horses before going to work in the morning.
mm,
They used to go to the stable, ride the horses, and go to work. And they were very, very nice people. They read every single book. They study, and they really loved their horses. But it was really difficult in public to touch your horse in sort of affectionate,
interesting.
because he was a military kind of background, and he was very manly to do things and this and that. And you really had to hide to be friendly and sweet to your horse.
Interesting.
And now I will tell you it for a simple example, simple fact, is that most of the women are riding right now, less and less men are riding, and more women are riding, and women have a sort of of understanding of being together than men don't, for a lot of reasons. And because of that, and because of the the ladies not following the man standard, they can be really nice to their horses, and that's okay. They can really enjoy it, and it's okay. They really look for that. Now, the way they do it sometimes is kind of a little disappointed. They are so serious that they lose the joy of loving their horses, but being taught that it's possible to smile and ride at the same time and enjoy and feel the joy and feel the beauty of it. The beauty comes from the joy. I really believe that. And
Yeah,
I think that's my teaching now more and more. I want the people to smile when they ride, because if they don't smile, why are you riding?
very true. I mean, the only reason any of us interact with horses at all,
Yeah,
unless we are cowboys, or, there are still some small niches where it is a very practical thing,
sure.
perhaps in the therapy world. But the only reason any of us interact with horses or ever did was because the horses made us feel good. They make us feel better. And then, we end up for a while in this cage where the very thing that was making us feel better is now making us feel terrible, because,
Yeah,
and then hopefully we break out of that cage.
but men do that with everything.
Yeah, exactly.
We
Humans do
enjoy
that.
it. We
Yeah.
enjoy it, then we don't enjoy it. Then the work, and then we destroy. And then we get older and we realize that there's nothing to do with that. But that's again, Sir Rupert. That's a human experience. You
It's
know,
so true. It's so true. And you were
the
talking about
human.
the male to female thing there, and I was thinking, yeah, but I know so many women that make their horses feel sad. And, so you were describing a male dysfunction from a previous generation. And now, of course, with women overtaking the horse world, you see both function and dysfunction, but now through a feminine lens. So it's still just people. But I do think you're right, though, that it's now what women have done is they've made us feel safe to be affectionate towards our horses, which is a very good point that you make there, which perhaps that wasn't so present before. Although, interestingly, growing up with hunting and that kind of cross-country riding in the Midlands of England, like I did, even though the culture was quite harsh in some ways, and I would say it was equally men and women out in the hunt field. It was probably
Yes,
50.
yes, it was.
But because I think there's something about trusting your life to the horse which you do out hunting, because even more than eventing, as you know, you've done it. You On a really good hunting day, you don't know what's on the other side of the fence when you go in, and sometimes that's a not very good surprise. And you trust the horse to get you out of trouble, and so
Yeah.
you have this kind of love and this gratitude to also. I grew up even with those old guys, watching them be very affectionate to their horses. I think
Yes.
a different ethic there, but nonetheless, I do agree that people weren't asking the question so much now, which they're asking is, you know, should I even be here? And how do I, looking back to all the days when, let's say I was trying to get a horse over a jump and it was a sticky horse and someone said, just make him do it, and you're sort of 14 years old, you think, oh gosh, I suppose I have to do this, but you have no idea how. So they tell you to kick, they tell you to hit the horse, so you do. And then you remember this now at our age with sort of shame and flinching, but at the time you were trying to do what you were told to do by an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that
Learning.
that
Life.
has gone much more. You just don't really see that so much anymore. Or let's say when you do see it, you really kind of notice it now, whereas it used to just be the norm. And speaking of that generation, just take us back again. Did you come from a horsey family? What did your
No,
family do?
no. I was not. My family was not horsey. I was a little town boys, and nothing to lead me to this life. But my brother became a sailor in organizing regatta around the world, and he was not a sailor either. Nobody at the boat.
What town did you grow up in, and what did your folks do?
Well, at the beginning, my first 10 years of my life was in Cognac, a little town of Charente, Cognac,
I know that town. Yeah.
and my dad was dealing with alcohol,
Hmm.
and we had a big delicatessen type of place with all the big family of the cognac there,
Hmm. Hmm.
the British family, and I was there on the jeudi with the nurses of the kids and all that stuff with
Mm-hmm.
his family, little Hennessy and Camus and Oda and all those people.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I was I moved 2 years in Orléans, and then I went to Poitiers after that.
Okay.
And
All relatively horsey areas of France, though. Gascony, Poitiers, the Loire Valley. There
yeah,
must have been horses around you.
yeah, there was a lot of pony clubs type of deal.
Mm.
And in Poitiers, I had the opportunity to have the man that imported a lot of Irish horses, in the 60s.
Mm.
Early 60s, a lot of Irish horses came there and a lot of jumpers.
Mm.
And then I went to Limoges to study with a gentleman from the Coton Noir, and he was on and on, just the French, the French regular stuff,
Mm-hmm.
to learn the basic from the military people.
Right. And then how did you find your way down to Portugal? Because this is
Well,
always a big mind blower. When I found my way down to Portugal, it was also the sort of universe broke open for me in equestrian way, in a very good way. How did you find your way down there? What was the story?
well, the story there is that I was in England, and I told myself after all the exam that I passed in England, I wanted to go to Portugal to him because he had the reputation of who he was, the top of the world, especially in France. We were very, I don't know if you know, but in France we have a lot of Lusitano breeders. And
Yes.
a lot of people who are involved in that kind
And
of.
were people breeding Lusitanos even back then? Because I thought it was a little bit more recent than that.
No, I mean, they started in the 70s, 80s.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was a pretty. Anyway, I wanted to go there, and then I just sort of wrote, and just I was there for a short period of a time, and then I went to Colorado with a group of other people at that time. That started my work in America. And then I went back to the ministry for 2 years
Okay.
in the 70s, 74, 75. And
Was it easy? Was it easy to have him accept you? Was it difficult to go and study with him, or
well,
was it relatively straightforward? Did you sort of show up and say, "Hey, I'm interested," and he?
well, I think he took at that time kind of anybody or everybody. There was no money involved. You know that the 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 mystery was kind of a sponsored by
Mm,
by people, and he did not drive a car. He did not do a lot of things, and his family just lived. And he trained that one horse a year
mm,
that was bought every year by a Belgian gentleman.
hmm.
And the price of the horse was basically the amount of the bill of the year before.
Okay.
Therefore, he was a sponsor, if I can say.
Right. So he was running. Nuno was running his stable as a sort of a laboratory, which was sponsored by certain wealthy folk who's from Northern Europe whose horses he was training. And so if you showed up as, if you like, a magician's apprentice in the alchemist's laboratory, he would take you for free. Was that the case, or did you?
I mean, not for free, but it was like 5 francs for that
Okay.
time, not even a dollar per lesson. For there was no money involved.
But there must have been people, a queue of people outside the door wanting to do this. So
Yeah,
how did you jump the queue? How did you find your way in there?
well, generally because the queue was generally in the summer, when the when
Okay.
it was a beautiful day. In the winter and all that, there was not so much activities.
Yes.
And also I had 7 horses with me at that time that I acquired when I was in Portugal and training at the master's place.
So you could bring those horses. He had enough space that you could show up with 7 horses. As you may know, if you've been following my work, we are also horsey folk here. And we have been training horses for many, many years in the manner of the old classical dressage masters. This is something which is often very confusing for people. We shine a light on that murky, difficult stuff and make it crystal clear. If you'd like to learn to train your horse in the manner of the old masters and really have fun and joy for you and your equine, go to our website, heliosharmony.com, sign up as a premium member, and begin to take the Helios Harmony course, which will take you from zero to the piaffe, where the horse is dancing on the spot, in hand, on the ground. And then from there, you can develop out to anywhere you want to. heliosharmony.com to unlock the secrets of the old masters.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I did not arrive at once with 7. I progressively I went up to 7.
It's interesting if you think about that now in modern terms. If someone was to go to, I don't know, one can think of some big names, it would be impossible to show up now, I think, on those terms with 7 horses and so on. It was a different economy, I suppose.
Yeah, but I mean, even now, I mean, you can. I mean, you went to Louis with no problem, and
Well,
Louis.
I paid, but then you either it depends what time of your life you are, right? You either pay with your time or you pay with your money. But
Yeah.
that relationship with the Valencas, yes, has evolved into even though I would say they are still my mentors, it's evolved into more of a collegial thing where I obviously send all my students to them because that's just common sense. But yes, I see what you mean. There's a point usually where you're paying, and then there's a point where you're working together. Right. That is true. That is
Yeah.
true. Okay, so here's a slightly tricky one. Many of the people who I have met who were long time products of Louis, of Mr. Oliveira, with the exception, I would say, of Luis Valença. Even people who are products of the products of Nuno often carry a certain bitterness. I don't mean bitterness towards the man. I mean an internal bitterness. Why do you think that is? It's
Uh,
puzzled me.
can you just tell me a little bit more what you call this? The
A sort of a misogyny, a sort of a dislike of their fellow human. Uh, and I do, and Luis Valença is an absolute exception to this.
Yeah.
He's one of the warmest humans I know, but so many others who I've met who there seems to be a yeah.
Well, can I tell?
I can't quite put my finger on.
Well, the mystery. Well, it's. I mean, for me, it's very clear. The mystery was a very complicated man,
Mm,
and a lot of people went there for other purposes than learning, right?
mm, mm,
And they get, the I I love my master. I think I learned a lot from him, and I consider him highly for him as a trainer and a rider and a man. But his life was very complicated.
mm, mm, mm,
His life was not very happy.
mm,
Yeah, he had he there was a lot of a challenge that
mm,
he had to
mm,
deal with. And
mm,
of course, when you have that energy-wise, well,
mm,
the energy that you spread around is the same. Again, it's a very personal thing.
mm,
You talk about Louis. Louis is always a very happy
mm,
person. You come and he has a smile on his face. It's very
Yeah,
rare.
he welcomes you, and yeah,
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 and every day, twice a day, or
yeah,
3 times a day.
yeah.
This is, again, it's a personal attitude. Now, all the other people, they they struggle. They have a struggle in life.
Mm,
They how can I say that politely? Everybody carry their own sickness.
sure, sure. I mean,
And,
yeah,
and they get associated to somebody that make their sickness better or worse. Let me tell you, for the 2 years that I was with the master, as I say, was a very, very close friend to me for about maybe 9 months or 10 months. Why? Because I was honest with him. What does that mean? Well, he used to be a little bit not sure of a lot of things in life. Like he will show you his red shirt and tell you it was black, and everybody around him would say, "Oh yes, your shirt is black." And then every time he asked me a question, I would ask him, "Mister, do you want the answer?" And because I knew it was a little tricky,
hmm
I said, "Do you want the answer?" And if he said yes, then I will tell him what I thought. I said,
yeah,
"No, your shirt is red. It's not black."
mm,
And I think because of that, I was honest with him on so many levels that he enjoyed that, because at at one point he did not know. There was
interesting.
there were so many difficulties in his life on so many levels that he could not see straight.
given that there were these complexities and a certain unhappiness, perhaps, why was it that his horses shone so much? Why did this not reflect in his horses?
Well, you are digging very deep there. I am not to answer your question. I think your horses are a reflection of who you are.
Mm,
And he was a very complex person. Therefore, he had this very strange energy that he worked with that was very successful. Now, I don't want to be bad, but nobody really interviewed his horses about it.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it's a very personal thing. The mystery was into what can I do to produce what I want to produce, and he was producing better than anybody else in the world that I can know
Mm,
about it. Now, was the horses involved in that? I am not sure, not the way I like them to be involved with me. And I love my master, and
yeah.
it's not negative things to say about him. He was who he was. Now, I don't know if you know Bettina then that left us, yes? Bettina just worked with him alone
Indeed.
because of of her mother and
Hmm.
so on. And I was teaching her afterwards, anyway, who wanted to be him
Mm,
and felt she had to be him for the world.
right.
And I used to have a regular fight with her because I never wanted to be the mystery. I love him. I think he was the greatest man for so many things. Do I want it to be him? No,
Mm,
no, 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 no. I do not want it to be him, ever, ever, ever. I learned a lot from him. He taught me a lot. I have certainly my richest time in my book, that I described those 2 years that I had with him was certainly one of the richest moments of my life.
mm,
And I thank him for that deeply. But do I want it to be him?
no.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
It's very interesting. I'm just thinking back to that book that you referred to earlier, Dressage for the New Age, that you wrote. When did you write that book? Uh,
Long, oh,
a while ago. Is it 40 years old? Would you say that book?
yeah, at least, yeah.
45 years old. And that was one of the first books that I read when I was beginning my journey into learning how to address this dressing of the horse business. And I also, had people say, "Oh, you must go and read Oliveira." And this is when I was just making my first trips down to Portugal as well. But I was not at that point lucky enough to meet Mr. Valenza. I was with some other people before I found my way there, and who didn't explain as clearly. But I could see that things worked extremely well. And I remember taking an exercise from your book and going, "That looks pretty clear." And this is back to my point about clarity earlier, because I'd read, some one or two of Nuno's books, and it was like reading, I don't know, the Book of Enoch in the original Coptic text. Just you could see that there was much in there that was absolutely wonderful, but I just couldn't make head or tail of it. And I, frankly, La Guerinière is easier to read. And then I read your book, and you said start with this exercise. You said do this little vault, do this little circle in the corner. And then you'll find that if you can stop when you've just gone through the corner and you're on the wall, you'll find yourself in this thing called the shoulders in, because you'll look at it and you'll see, look, the arse is on the wall and the shoulders are on the inside track. So that's why it's called that thing. And then if you go around again, so take a mental snapshot sort of thing, and then you go around again, then just see if you can go one or two steps like that. And I remember reading that and going, well, that makes sense. And I went and tried it with my backyard quarter horse and it worked. Boom. And I was like, clarity, rationality. And I remember thinking, I was so grateful to you, Dominique. So I've sort of been following you that way for some years. And then, of course, when our mutual great friend Joel Dunlap, who runs the incredible therapeutic program and thoroughbred aftercare program, Square Peg Foundation in California. When she told me she was working with you, I was like, yes, absolutely, go work with that man. Because I remember for me that opened a door of understanding where I was like, I see. And then I could go back to what Nuno was writing, go, oh, I see, Nuno, you're sort of telling me to do that, but you just can't bring yourself to put it in quite such direct, terms.
Right? It did not want it to be clear at that time. There was another era. At that time, you sat with 10, 12 other stallion, and you were in line for your shoulder in and your horse in. And it was very, I hate to say that, but it was very mechanical.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that, but it's very mechanical for a lot of people.
Mm.
I mean, even in the Portuguese department, I mean, they are wonderful writers, they are wonderful guys, but they are still in a mechanical aspect of their life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question of, where one is in one's personal philosophy,
That's it.
and I wouldn't put Mr. Valenza in there. I think he communicates a kind of love to his horse that his horse
Yes,
just
yes.
responds to.
Luis is a different, but again, because Luis is a different human being.
He is. I mean, the amount of love that man can exude, and that you just see the horses basking in it. Speaking of Portuguese, there's a man who I think often goes unsung in this whole education process that you've gone through, that I'm involved in, that I always encourage people to get involved in, who was contemporary with Nuno, but people don't know about him so much, of course, and that's Bragança, Dom Diogo de Bragança.
You're good, yes.
I know that you know a lot about this man, and I think that it would be really useful for listeners and watchers to be aware of this person, because I feel that he was what you're talking about. But I never met him. I've only read his books because, of course, he died, I think, in the 90s. But from what I can read, he seemed to be coming from that much more point of compassion that you're talking about. Can you? But perhaps talk to us about him.
Well, when I arrived in Portugal the first time, the mestre had his show in Lisbon, yeah,
Mm.
in north of Lisbon, at the place where Dr. Guillaume Borba was the man that started the Jerez school, the Spanish school in Spain, and the Portuguese school also there. And there were three people. There was Dr. Borba, it was Don Diogo Bragança, and it was Dr. Of his name now. He was a leading
The portly man with the moustache who you always see in the front of the pictures from the
no,
Portuguese Royal School. Him, the
no, no, no,
veterinary
no.
dude.
No,
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 not
no,
him.
no, 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 no. He was a little more aged than the mystery. He
Okay.
was anyway. There were
Right.
those three person, and they were all riding with the mystery in Lisbon. That's where I met them,
Mm.
and they were the people that they knew. They read everything that could be read on horses. They speak Spanish and German and French, and they read every single book there was. And on top of it, they were training horses in the different books level and
Mm.
talking to the master about this. And they were all a student, and they were just an incredible amount of knowledge that was there. And I was lucky enough to be there at that time and to see them. And Diogo was certainly one of the most. I love his book. L'Équitation Tradition Française is one of those most wonderful books there is there, because the man was able to very simply explain all the different theory. Like he has a passage there on Baucher. Baucher is a very much à la mode right now. Everybody is a Baucherist. But Baucher was a very complex man also, and a very
Mm.
fun method and this and that. And you need to read it and you need to forget about it. That's what I always say about it. But he is, in his book, able to explain to you very simply what it was, at least simply about.
Mm, mm.
And again, a very, very clear man. Very, very clear man. You know, at that time, what they did is that they used to throw a party, and at Dr. Barber's place, a small little picadero up the hill, and they used to bring horses in from the field, and in a very Portuguese way, they used to choose not the good horse. They used to choose a horse that was kind of a not ugly looking, but not the most pretty one, and not the most gifted one. Yes, and they used to present it there to their friend, and all their friend was there drinking and smiling and joking. It's, oh, you will never be able to do this, and that horse is so bad this and so bad that, and they were having a wonderful Portuguese time there. And then, not even a year later, they would have another party, and they would show that horse doing everything from Grand Prix on that horse in less than a year, and that was their way of life. That's what they were doing, and in the lot of a very very happy kind of way of doing it. And the clarity again of Diogo is pretty extraordinary. Really, I mean, I say his book is certainly the best book of the century for, again, physical writing. For, again,
Yeah.
what people do. People do this wonderful physical stuff that they do. For they can mix it with love a little bit. They can do this, they can do that, but basically they use their spurs, and basically they do the banging and the pushing. And it's not really saying it, but that's what they do.
This book is Dressage in the French tradition,
Correct.
Xenophon Press,
Yeah.
Dom Diogo de Bragança. Now, let's talk about Spurs and things. So I've got nothing for or against Spurs. I happen not to use them.
Good, good. I'm very glad.
And
I'm very happy for you.
I wouldn't even necessarily say it was a kind of conscious decision. I made a conscious decision, for example, well, actually, the reason I gave up fox hunting was actually from the shamanic world, but we can go into that. Even though I still ride to hounds, but I go after bloodhounds and we hunt each other, it's different. But
Yep.
with Spurs, what's so interesting is it just never occurs to me to put them on. Like, it's just never in my mind.
Well,
And
let me tell you,
I've never found it. I've never found that I've needed them. I've never found that.
Spurs are wonderful. Spurs are terrific machine for physical riding. You could do things with spurs that you cannot do without spurs.
Right.
Okay.
Can you tell us what those things are?
Effet d'ensemble, together effect and all that stuff. It's just
And very, very quickly,
yes.
what is the effet d'ensemble? Because a lot of people don't know. And a lot of
My
people
God! Can I not talk about it because I don't want to? Because thank you, because nobody is going to do it and nobody should learn about it because it's something that the horse doesn't like.
Yes. Okay, in that case, because just from a journalistic point of view, we can't bring it up and not say what it is.
Okay, well, I can tell you it is basically saying yes and no at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like coming behind somebody and poking him in the ribs as hard as you can.
While not letting him move. Yeah.
That's it.
Except they don't attack with the spur. They do this gradual intent of, so gradually they put the spurs on and on and on and on.
Gradually or not.
The horse kind of goes, huh.
Yeah, but gradually or not. And I mean, it's very powerful. It's very great. But again, do the horses like it?
Yeah. No.
Therefore, I just said, no. Do your horse like spurs? No. Okay. Well, do your horse like half-halt, like when you kick them in the teeth because you can't control them? No.
Yes, if that's what one's half-halt is, yeah, sure.
All those things are not correct for the horses.
No, I couldn't agree more. But what I found is that one can follow these guys as books without doing any of that stuff. Like, I found that you can take the
Rupert,
the dance and just not do that stuff, and it still works.
Rupert, I understand, but you cannot part we take one part out and say, well, let's read it a thing. I think reading is wonderful. I think reading, you can learn a lot by reading a
Mm,
lot of books, okay?
mm,
But that's what it is from another person.
mm,
This is
mm.
not your experience. This is what somebody else has put on a piece of paper that can help you. Absolutely. But if your goal is not the same goal, I mean, if your goal is happiness of the horse, eliminate the way I did my stuff is by eliminate everything my horse did not like.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm not. I think we're absolutely talking to the same point here.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is that I found that the horses, because here's the question people often ask: does a horse enjoy dressage? And when people ask me that, I say, well, it depends how you do it. Because if you observe a horse in a field when they're in their passion, and that passion can be a passion of play or a passion of anger or a passion of lust, they will do all of these movements, and they will often offer that, like you were talking about with your horse Don Giovanni or my horse Zag. They'll often just offer them up, and they'll offer them up joyfully if you allow it to be joyful. So what I found is that the mechanical stuff of the in-hand work and showing a horse, look, I'd like you to put this inside leg here, and I'd like you to put that outside leg here. Now, could you straighten it out a bit like this? And oh, look, this happens. That can be done without any need for violence. You don't need any kind of, as you say, aggressive half halt. You don't need any kind of spur. You don't need any kind of anything. You don't need to push with the seat. You don't need to kick. You can absolutely allow the horse to access these passionate behaviors that they already do in a way that they enjoy, as you say, provided you don't do something that they don't enjoy.
Yeah.
But so when you're showing people how to do this, because the dance is a beautiful dance and the dance has a function. So for me, that function might be to have a horse that can produce oxytocin in a child. Someone else, it might be something else, but it could also just be for the art and for the joy, or as the Irish would say, for the crack, just for the fun of it. When you are showing people now how to take that stuff that you learned, which was shown to you with whips, with spurs, with all those things, and now to do it without any of that stuff, what's your way? What's your route that you show people?
Well, again, it's an individual thinking, and you people do what they want to do. And if they define their goal, if their goal is to have their horse happy,
Mm.
don't do things they don't like.
Yes, but that we've established, and I think you're absolutely right.
That's
So
it.
what do you show people to do? Because, you have a structure to your teaching.
Sure, sure.
Tell us the structure of your teaching.
Well, we do the very much, I suppose, the same way that you learn from Louis. So you have a lunging, and
Mm,
you allow the horse to enjoy and play, and then after that you tell him that he has to do a little work and he needs to be in a certain position, yeah,
mm-hmm,
and that position allow him to be in a certain balance.
mm-hmm.
And when he's in a certain position, a certain balance, he's able to produce certain movement.
Yeah.
And you do your work in hand very simply, and then you do the riding and the shoulder in, the haunches in, and the pirouette
Mm.
very clearly with a visualization. And it's
Tell us about the visualization. How do you help people to that visualization? What tools? You must give them certain tools because not everyone can do it so naturally. Thank you.
I think it's just a form, for people. It's a For people, whether you're sensitive to, you are sensitive to music, you are sensitive to look, you are sensitive to smell, you are sensitive to a lot of stuff, yeah? The visualization is all about that. It's all about playing a little video of what you want to have happen.
Mhm.
Okay? And I believe that this little video you play is as real as anything.
Yeah.
And so when you play the video, the video becomes the reality of your next ride. You see, though, I was starting the conversation with you about this double understanding where life is and what is it and what does that mean. Well, you have a certain reality of what you think and a certain reality of what's happening and a certain reality of both.
Absolutely.
And when you have those both things, then you have the oneness that everybody is looking for. You have this centralization, the feeling that you are mind and body together, and then you start your spiritual thinking from that aspect of it.
Absolutely. What I see will normally block people from that, particularly in the equine situation, is fear. So, and
Yes,
it's fear
absolutely.
of, because it's multiple fears at the same time, right? It's fear
Yeah,
of,
but fear is simply what you don't know.
okay.
If you know, there's no fear.
But right, but you're when people don't know, they don't know. So
Okay.
when they're learning something from you, they're learning something they don't know. So if they're blocked by fear, because let's say fear is the stress hormone cortisol, and cortisol, is a neurotoxin that cuts for a nanosecond the connection between the thinking part of the brain in front and the keeping you alive part of the brain at the back. When that someone is in that situation because they're afraid of their horse, they're afraid of falling off, they're afraid of you, the instructor, they're afraid of being seen to be silly because they don't know, they're afraid of 10 things at the same time. That's normal. And we then say to them, okay, we'd like you to visualize this thing, but they can't access this thing because the fear's in the way. How do you help them through that?
Well, I think you have to precise what you are fearing about.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are not fear the horses; they are fear the energy of the horse.
Mm.
Therefore, sometimes sitting on a bucket in the stall, reading a book is the most important part for them to do.
Just to be with the horse.
Just to be there, just to realize there's nothing fearful about it, just by being with it.
Mm.
And then from that, then they can touch them and they can, groom them and do it through the whole thinking things.
When someone is coming into the arena with you, let's say they don't know you so well, you teach all over the place, so you must get some new people quite often. They will come in with certain fear, and of course, perhaps they've brought their horse to a clinic or a workshop that you're doing, and the horse is in an unfamiliar place, so it's looking around and snorting, and perhaps this person has bought themselves a very big warm blood that, whose movement is a little bit too much for them, and you walk into there with all of your history and all of your story and all of your tools, and you gonna help this person to visualize something that's almost the opposite of what's going on. How do you help them to unpick in that hour that they have you for? What are some tools and
Generally,
tricks
it's
that you
less.
and some homework that you can give them to go home with that?
Generally, it's much less than an hour because
Yes,
nobody can take an hour from me.
indeed.
Nobody can. Well, the very first thing I think that they have to understand is the be present.
Okay.
Okay, the being present is certainly the most important part there.
And
Yeah,
how do they do that?
be present. Again, they have to practice. They have to buy a little pillow and sit by the tree or sit by their thing and just be with themselves. Okay, because if they are not with themselves, okay, they are not going to be okay with nothing around them.
But they can't. Are you telling them they need to dismount and put their horse back in the box and go sit under a tree for a while,
Well,
then come back into the arena with you, or something more immediate?
sometime I do. You would be amazed.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed. No, but simply that they have to identify what is happening. And
Okay.
if they don't know what's happening, if they don't know the problem, they can't solve it.
And how do you help them to identify that? I'm interested.
Identify, we start talking about cooking sometime. We start
Mm-hmm.
talking about something else. We start talking about, well, what would you like to do today?
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to, a little bit when you have a lunch, or what are you going to order? Are you going to do fish, or are you going to do meat? Or are you going to do vegetables, or are you going to do grain? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, just be there, talking to the person, know what's happening, and then see how is the horse. And generally, they tell you the whole big story about how bad he was and how good he is. Therefore, that's wonderful. That's positive. And then they say, what would you like me to do with you? And they have to come out and tell you what they want. And then you tell them. Sometimes they say, oh, I don't know anything. And I say, that's a good start. You know more than most people right there.
Mm.
And then you joke, you smile, and you go through the process.
Mm. Right. So you're talking about you establish human connection. That's really what you're saying. You establish empathy. You
Well,
establish
that's the only way I know how
yeah,
I'm able to communicate those people for the short period of a time. Generally, I ask them to be there for the whole day, to
right.
see all the other people and all the other horses and all that they know a little bit what was going on. And after 3 days, we become very friendly. We don't want to leave.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
I can see, the reason it might seem asinine that I'm peeling back the onion layers and you can tell that I'm a journalist
that's,
until I get to the answer, because
that's okay.
what seems obvious to you may not seem obvious to somebody else.
Of
And
course.
there will be people who are listening who are at the beginning of their instructor journey. And it's one of the things which people, I think, we all forget when we're learning is that the instructor can often be as afraid as us and but can't show it. And so when one thing I often tell people is learn how to manage your instructor. Remember, they're just another monkey and they're probably as scared as you. So if you can establish that connection and actually advocate for what you want and need and say, well, I'm feeling like this, or I'm afraid of this, or I'm uncomfortable here, or I'm really enjoying this. Could we do more of that? Or I feel now that I need a little break to just process this information. Any of these perfectly reasonable things. A lot of people, I think, when they become instructors, they feel they also want to give money's worth. That okay, this person's paying me all this money for this hour. I must give them, 60 minutes of instruction, and otherwise they're not going to be happy with me. And that's often the instructor's fear. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes, you must have had this when it's very clear after 15 minutes.
I used to, but I don't anymore. Now, let me tell you,
Yeah, yeah.
it's all about who is the instructor and who is a student,
Go ahead.
and what they believe. I had some different experience in my life that
Mm,
when you are around a certain people, you are in a different, completely different way that you are on your own. I did many trip in India, and I have a lot of very, very good people over there, and a lot of people that just are basically healers, if I can say in a general term, yes.
mm,
And you are around them and you feel good.
mm, mm,
And I don't, it's me, but I don't really analyze how am I going to do this, or am I going to do that, or this
mm,
and that. It's going to happen or it's not going to happen.
mm,
And somebody in my presence, with the horse in my presence, and me telling them what I want to tell them is going to change things.
mm, mm.
It is automatically changing by the presence of two people and the horse.
Right.
And I believe this is stronger than anything else that I could twist my brain and try to figure out this and this and that. Therefore,
Mm,
right now, you ask me the technicality of how do I do this and how do that. To tell you the truth, I don't know. I
mhm,
show my face, and I'm the nicest person as I can. That, first of all, to the horse, secondly, to the person. And we're going to spend 20 minutes and half an hour together.
mhm,
And I'm going to try to find 1 or 2 points that I can help you to figure it out during that period of time.
mhm, mhm.
That's all. It's all what it is.
Right, but I think again you did give the mechanism there, which is it's relationship and empathy. And making creating safety is I think what you're talking about too.
Yes, yes, it's somebody that you trust, and somebody who is there,
Mm,
and somebody that you think know more, and somebody that cares for your horse and for you. Well,
mm,
when that is created,
mm.
then everything is there for
No,
me.
I would agree. I would agree. So what are you working on now? Where is Barbier World going now?
Oh my God, where am I working? I don't know what I'm working on. I'm trying to go less and less, and it doesn't work too well. I mean,
Mm.
after COVID, I think we have been attacked by all sorts of things, and I wanted to sort of slow down and take things easy, and I don't think I'm very successful at it. Therefore, as I do with everything, I take it stride, and I'm still teaching everywhere and enjoying every time that I am with my horses and my people. And I try more and more to create some more off time, a little bit if I can, a little bit before, a little bit after. Like I am in Portugal right now. I'm working because I want to try to find a horse for my friend. It's wonderful. But basically, I want to create a very very nice time and just enjoying a cup of coffee. You know what I mean?
I do.
And because there's not much than that. You know, I have the choice of I have the great pleasure to have great friends everywhere. You know, Louis is down the road, and I have a lot of other friends that from that era that I know from there, and I'm going to visit them. I'm going to say hello, and we're going to have coffee, and we're going to have a talk, and we're going to play with horses. It's
Do
okay with me right now.
and do please do tell Louis hello from me and give him
Sure,
my
I will.
and
I
my
will.
my never-ending gratitude to that man. I know from your friend and my friend, Mr. Richard Williams at Xenophon Press, that I think you have a book that is either coming out or has recently come out. Is that not right? A
Say
new
that
book.
again. I have a new book coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about the new
Yeah.
book.
Oh my God, it's difficult. You definitely are a journalist there. It's very good. Well, yes, I have a new book. and and I have a good joke about my new book. It's going to be very, very, very fast, and it's going to be a simple word on a simple page, and it's going to be my book. It's going to be called Consciousness. Because I realize more and more as we were talking together this morning that the simple conversation that we have is simply a different way to express our consciousness. Are we the way we are looking at life? Some people are looking at life right now. We went through your questions, your thing. You have this certain way of having people talking about their life and talking about how they understand their training, or they understand their teaching, or they understand this and that. And the story, the answer to all that is consciousness. What does
So
that
tell us about the book. What's in the book?
what does that mean? What does that mean?
Mm.
It means it depends. The different of consciousness that you are in is going to dictate your question for this interview, for example.
Indeed.
And it's nothing to do with me or you. It has to do with you thinking about, well, we're going to talk about the old master. You are fascinated by the old masters, yeah? You read it, you that. And then you are fascinated by this, you are fascinated by that, and you ask what the other person enjoy, what do they think about those questions. Especially for me right now, I hate to say that to you, but I'm really not on that level right now. I am really not on the level on anything, because I'm the more the older I get, the more I understand that this is not where it's at. This is not how much leg do we apply. This is not how much angle we have in the shoulder in. This is not how much is that. It's part of me. I still love it, and I still teach it, and I do that. But it's not where it's all about. Is your horse happier with little less angle because his outside leg in the shoulder in can go forward instead of going wrong like most people do?
Mm.
That is important to me. But to have your horse more happy doing it, that's really is my concern right now.
And in your book, Consciousness, are you helping people, do you feel, to get to that point where they can
Again,
allow that happiness and not block that happiness with their horse?
Rupert, again, it is my message right now of where I am that I think can help people look better at what they are doing with their horses,
Mm.
improve their relationship with it. Now, that's it.
Mm.
That's it. Now, would that produce a better Piaf? Yeah. Would that produce a better Chauvelin? Yeah. Would that produce this better? Yes. But really, my goal is to put more smile on their faces. That way, their horses would be left alone more, and they would be more happy.
I couldn't agree more. It's funny, when the whole, the training scale, the training pyramid, which is an interesting thing because the bloke that came up with that, the German bloke that came up with that
Yeah.
himself said that he got it wrong
Yeah,
and
of
said,
course, you
and
did it
said,
wrong.
actually, it shouldn't be rhythm first. It should be relaxation. Everything should be relaxation.
Of
But
course.
now, he edited his own thing. The one thing I always thought was so missing from the training scale is where's joy on that training scale?
Yes,
And it's
it-
interesting. I think you maybe think that I am more technical than minded than I am, but rather like you, I look at the technology of riding in the same way that I look at the technology of shamanism. In that I know, because remember, you must remember who you're talking to here. You're talking to a man who rode across a large chunk of Mongolia with his 5-year-old autistic child sitting in front of him in a saddle, going from shaman to shaman.
That's
And
it.
who lived with the Bushmen for a lot. So I'm
That's
looking
it.
through multiple lenses, of course,
That's it.
and
That's it.
I'm looking basically through the lens of love, because what you're talking about, consciousness, is just another word for love.
Sure.
The and joy is just another word for love, and there really are only two emotions: there's love and there's fear, and there's nuances of those which we give other names, but basically that's it. And are we riding our horse in fear? Is our horse in fear? Is our horse? And sometimes we are. Sometimes our horse is in fear. Sometimes we're in fear.
Yeah.
And if we're in fear, if our horse is in fear, it doesn't necessarily even mean it's our fault. There can be many things going on inside that
Sure.
horse that have
Sure.
nothing to do with us at all.
Sure.
But yes, certainly our job is to put a smile
Now
within ourselves and a
to
smile in our heart. Yeah.
I agree 100% with what you said. Just to go back to answer your question and not being
Mm,
such a hard ass, is I am trying to have a book about how the language of writing must change. The language of learning must change in order to adapt herself to what we're actually doing.
mm,
The impulsion is becoming the energy. Yes.
mm,
And a lot of different words like the afford and all that stuff has to go away. They don't mean anything anymore. Because when the when your relationship start to be more mental than physical, we need other words to
mm,
define the different complexes, the different way of you looking at things.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, interesting. If energy replaces the word impulsion, do you have a word, a way of thinking to replace the concept of the half halt?
Well, the afford, you see, again, right there, the balance is there.
Mm,
We do
mm,
not change the balance.
mm, mm,
This ideas of changing the balance is
mm,
ridiculous.
mm,
The changing of the balance is happening with the upper part of your body and getting
mm,
taller. Yes, and going to the upper body when you are connected with your horse. But when you are connected with your horse, where does that connection come from?
mm.
That connection is a mental connection.
Yeah.
Again, we cannot use the same words because we do physical and we do mental, because it's not the same idea.
It's very interesting. I was teaching, I think about a year and a half ago or so, and the person asked me, so how do I keep the balance? And then I realized you don't. What you do is you lose it and you retrieve it and you lose it and you retrieve it and you lose it and you retrieve it, just like you do when you walk. It's just that when you were a toddler and you were learning to walk and you face planted many times,
Yeah.
you learned to make the process more efficient, but the commitment of weight is still, of loss of balance is still the same. So that if I'm walking along the road after too many beers and I hit a paving stone that's a quarter of an inch higher than the other one,
The balance is a
still
problem.
fall flat on my face. In fact, I don't even need the beers. And so it's not about trying to keep balance, because this is not a possibility. It's about joyfully losing it and joyfully reclaiming it. And it's funny, it's often the people who ask you those questions in those teaching situations that teach you what it
Yeah.
is you actually need to learn. And you're like, oh my gosh, thank you for asking that question, because now you've actually made me turn my attention to this in a way that's actually really helpful for me. So thank you very much. So I would be fascinated to know, can you give us a couple more examples of useful recalibrations of language that you're playing with there in that book? Because I think these things really do help. Again, back to the visualization, I think it helps if people even just hear it now from you. It plants seeds, yeah. So you've got energy instead of impulsion. Are there a couple of other things that?
Yeah, we got position in instead of action.
Okay.
Position, no action.
Okay.
In other words, your position is the one that determine your action, but you're not doing. You see, the French writing to his best is not doing. The descente de main, descente de jambe is created because you put your hand and your leg in a position where you cannot use them. Yes? Now, well, why is that? Why is that? Because you are going to have a change of consciousness. The word again. Because when your hands and your leg are in a position where you cannot use them, what's happening? Well, that's happening. You are going to have a chance of looking at things differently because you are going to get completely mental and maybe with a touch of something else. You see what I mean? Now, how many people define that descente de main, descente de jambe? How many people told you why we're doing it? They don't use the word consciousness. They're afraid of it. Because consciousness is looking at things differently. They don't want to look at things differently. They want to look at what they look and make it a little better if they can, but they don't want to change it.
It's interesting for me, descente de main, descente de jambe make perfect sense because, and by the way, for listeners that don't speak French, that means descente means going down, but let's just translate it as letting go of the hand and letting go of the leg.
And putting them in a position where you cannot use them.
Exactly.
That's important.
So when I'm up there with an autistic child, that child will do things sometimes. I've had children like crawl up onto my shoulders or crawl around me. And at that point, I can't be riding. I've got to absolutely trust my horse to be my compadre. And my leg and my hand cannot act, which means that if he's expecting my leg and my hand to act all the time, and then suddenly I abandon him in that moment and he feels lost, we could have a not great outcome for that child. But if I can prepare the horse and myself together into a unit over time, and I stress over time, this is another thing about descente du main, descente de jambe. It's not something that happens immediately. It's a process like everything. But let's say we go through
but can I say something?
But for me, it's entirely practical because there are so many times I cannot use either my hand or my leg.
But it is a process, but it's not. You know, the big thing about the big recipes of the chef is that they never talked about this on the jambe. It was kind of a mystical thing that they were not talking about it. Yeah. Why? But you can have a descente de jambe at the walk.
Yes, sure.
On the circle with the pony.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Again, it's a vision. It's a different way to look at things.
100%. No, with that 100%. Yeah, we could. In fact, I think we're going to have, with your permission, we're going to have a series of other conversations, I think, around these concepts, because which we should do as YouTube conversations that are different to this podcast, because this podcast is much more really, how did you become you? And what can we, steal from you as we listen to you, which I certainly have stolen a lot from you already. And, I'll continue to steal more, hopefully. But I think these nuances are really worth exploring as their own conversations, because, again, I think they're very helpful for people as they are exploring the journey of this dressing of the horse thing as a way to love, as a way to consciousness, as an expression of consciousness, as an expression of love. Because yes, as you say, you can, if I'm cantering with a child and I need descente du main, descente de jambe, because that child is now taking all of my attention. It's taking my hands, and
Well,
that's very different to the situation where I
you taught me also something today. I never thought
yeah
about having a
yeah
child galloping with me, but if you need a child to think about it, that's fine with me also. But
yeah
when you are on your own and just doing it with nothing, to consciously have a different knowledge and different aspect of life, that's fabulous.
yeah
Fabulous.
yes. And interestingly, what that brings me to, you talk about consciousness, you talk about love, purpose, service. So the only reason I'm doing the dressage thing at all was because I found it was a way to bring well-being to a child, and then I found
Yeah.
that you could
Yeah.
also use it if you did it the right way. You could use it to give well-being to the horse as well. Fantastic. And now you've got a horse with well-being that can give a child well-being.
and and
Fantastic.
you get more and more conscious
Indeed.
of what you're doing, and more you elevate your understanding of everything else with that.
And this is a difficulty with competition, is that the service,
Well,
there's
well,
nothing wrong intrinsically with competition, but the service is really to yourself.
yeah,
And that's where it gets tricky. That's where it gets tricky.
not even. Can you see how many happy competitive people you have in the world?
No, yeah, sure. Not many.
Okay, work
Yeah.
for it's just one of those illusions that you can create, and
Mm,
then you enjoy it, and then people do this, do that, and they mature,
mm,
and the day they mature, they decided they don't want to compete anymore.
yeah, absolutely.
Because there's
Absolutely.
something else there. There's so much more. I think that really the the way we ride is more a path to enlightenment, a path to
Mm,
really realize who we are,
mm.
really.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. That's a human experience thing.
What was it Confucius says? To be happy, practice the arts.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Listen, my friend, this has been wonderful, and we've hit the 2 hour mark, and I think that I can think of like 20 further conversations I would like to have with you. So but also I think that the listeners and the viewers would like to know how to get in contact with you, and how to access your books, and how to come and train with you and work with you if they can. So could you outline how they can make contact with you, websites, what are your books, etc., so that they can.
Okay, well, the best way for this is to go to Barbier Farm. Yes, Barbier Farm at AOL.com. And
Mhm.
they would have all my books and all my saddles and all my videos and all my. I have a foundation. They can have a subscription to my foundation. They can do whatever they want, and then they can pick up the phone.
Okay.
Even my phone, I'm always available. Or send me an email, and they say what they want to know. And generally, I'm pretty good. I do answer most of it. And if I don't answer, send it back, and I will answer you again. And then if you have nothing, better to do, come to California. When I am there, make sure I am there, because I am generally somewhere else. Therefore, just tell me. We do a symposium and a clinic at home in California, and then you can catch me. You can have the list of where you catch me. You can catch me this week in Portugal, and next week in Switzerland, and the week after in Idaho.
So I'm
Therefore,
looking at your website here, and it's
yes,
dominiquebarbier.com.
that's it.
So Dominique with a QUE, and
Yes,
Barbier, of course, Barbier,
yes,
dominiquebarbier.com. And you've got your telephone number right here on the contact page. So,
that's it. I get everything.
okay. So, and I presume there's an email on there as well. The books, for my friends, I'm just addressing the listeners and viewers, they're worth reading. And so get yourself some of Dominique's books, and, you just have to
Yeah.
go to Xenophon
And
Press.
then just a little word about this. Buy it from me. Don't buy it from Amazon. Amazon is going to kill us. For spend a little bit more money, and I promise I would feed my horses with that money.
Yes,
because
as a fellow
because all,
author,
all my money go to horses. Therefore, but don't go to Amazon. Just buy the book from the people who write the book. It's much more important than that. we don't make money on books anyway, as everybody knows. We don't make books to make money either. Therefore, it's okay. But buy the books from the farm and then come and visit anytime.
Super. And I'm certainly going to. I'm going to be in California next year, so maybe I'll try to make sure that you're there. Maybe we
absolutely. And I have a good Merlot. I forgot. I would make you taste my Merlot. It's a wonderful Merlot I have.
Well, just to be polite, I guess I could perhaps drink a glass of good wine.
That's it.
Maybe for quality control, I might have to have a second glass. Just it was actually,
and maybe by accident I will give you a bottle to bring home.
It's these things. Yes, I found there's a progression, and then I can go through a different process of descente du main and descente de jambe.
That's it. That is much easier, much
more direct. Yeah.
Yes.
And I can then lose my consciousness, which is
that's it.
the mad joy of life. Is it not?
And then when you find it bigger.
A little slower each time, but yes.
That's it.
Well, listen, my friend,
thank you so much.
A delight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Live Free, Ride Free. I'm your host, Rupert Isaacson, New York Times bestselling author of The Horse Boy and The Long Ride Home. Before I jump in with today's guest, I want to say a huge thank you to you, our audience, for helping to make this happen. I have a request. If you like what we do here, please give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, tell a friend. It really, really helps us to make the progress. To find out about our certification courses, online video libraries, books, and other courses, please go to rupertisaacson.com. So now let's jump in.